in late 1960s was much more participated by people of Pakistan from with different various walks of life compared to this movement, and this only contributed to the exacerbation of circumstances for the military regime in 2007. Other political actors were also playing some kind of role, either from within the country or outside the country. And when this protest by the lawyers gathered momentum, the task became easier. The other impression that we have heard is from Irshad, who says that well, to start with, it may have been a good protest demonstration and movement, but later on it degenerated into some kind of parallel government. I think the impression is correct, and there again I would say that there is ample evidence to conclude that the judiciary, the superior judiciary, since its restoration in 2009 and before that many judges had already been restored, the superior judiciary has played a role of some kind of a spoiler in the Pakistani context. Spoiler in the sense that when it comes to relations between the civil and military authorities, the superior judiciary seems to have acted knowingly or unknowingly, rightly, well, wrongly I would say, intentionally or unwittingly, in support of the military authorities. And there is, I think, ample evidence. I think, just as Iftikhar Chaudhry said in his interview with CNN, that he wanted supremacy of the constitution, rule of law in order to strengthen democracy in Pakistan. I think there is ample evidence to conclude, and if we were to have 2 or 3 hours to discuss, I would cite cases, examples from the court proceedings, which can only lead us to conclude that the Supreme Court actually hampered the growth of democracy in Pakistan in the last 4 years or so. So these are the major things that I think which I can contend very confidently. But apart from that, since we are here sitting discussing people's rights and how we can strengthen movements in South Asia, so let's talk about the kind of relationship that the people of Pakistan have had with the judiciary and the so-called movement, which has been dubbed as the most successful movement by any legal community anywhere in the world in the last, I don't know how many decades or hundreds of years. I'm not such great a fan of this movement. I was part of the movement. I was excited. I participated in demonstrations, protests, and there were many actually occasions that I barely survived arrest. And on one occasion, my boss actually made me, take a flight instead of sit in a session where all the participants were arrested. I had to, go out of that session, which was being held at the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, and my boss ordered me to go and take the flight to fly to Karachi and attend a case next morning. So I think I lost the opportunity by a few minutes. So I have written this, and I think I would like to recount it from as I have tried to articulate it in my writing. And I'm going to write something about the lawyers' movement toward the end of this year in a bigger, longer piece. So the protests, rallies and demonstrations by the legal community from 2007 to 2009 took everyone in and outside Pakistan by surprise. People were impressed with the perseverance of the lawyers from around the country in the face of a military dictator and enforcing a political government to ensure that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry, was restored. What was the purpose of the lawyers' movement? This is, I think, a central question which should go to the heart of the debate, whether the movement has been able to achieve anything or not. and what kind of relationship has it had with the people of Pakistan. I think it's worth asking whether the movement brought some fundamental change in the state and society and the relationship between the two, or even within the judicial system of Pakistan. Was it aimed at strengthening the system of justice for the benefit of the common man in Pakistan, or common women for that matter? My view is that the strengthening of the system of justice for the benefit of the common man was certainly never was the core purpose of the movement. It was a means to an end denoted by the empowerment of the legal community, which includes the judges and the lawyers of Pakistan. And it built up its own nuisance value and membership as a secondary partner of the powerful establishment, which is obviously led by the military establishment, military authorities in Pakistan. Was it a movement? As I have been saying this, I don't think it was really a movement in the real sense of the word. And questions that I have raised cannot be answered without answering and without retrospectively and looking at the events in history that have got labeled as the lawyers' movement or the movement. There are scholars who did not consider the lawyers' movement as a movement even during 2007, 2008 and 2009. And I can cite examples of who they are, who they were. Some scholarship has come to surface in the last 3-4 years' time. It did not qualify as a movement perhaps in comparison to what Pakistan witnessed during the late 1960s when another military dictator was ruling Pakistan. It was General Ayub Khan, and at that time underprivileged people from all walks of life came together to protest Ayub Khan's military dictatorship. The movement of the 1960s included farm labor, factory workers, students, and people like the small-time chaiwalas too. Who were the contributors to the movement, the lawyers' movement in 2007 through 2009? I think the political action spearheaded by the legal community since 2007. It was the media, the so-called civil society organizations who don't really have a basis at the grassroots level, and also ex-servicemen, ex-army personnel who had their own grudges against the Musharraf regime. And there were also some other groups. Okay. There were also some other groups who took part, and they included traders and businessmen and small and middle classes who had an urban and middle class background. A lot of them, such as some members of the ex-servicemen association, as I've just said, that they had their own personal reasons to protest against General Musharraf. Middle class traders from Islamabad and Rawalpindi especially participated in this movement. And where were the real dispossessed, the people of Pakistan in that movement? They were nowhere to be seen, really. I attended a number of rallies, a number of demonstrations. It was always dominated by the presence of lawyers, and a huge number of lawyers, a significant proportion, if not a majority, is very conservative and have affiliation with right-wing groups or political parties, right-wing political parties. So I think why the question arises: why were the real dispossessed Pakistanis, the people of Pakistan, missing from the picture? I think the missing link between security of the judiciary and empowerment of the legal community and the socio-economic uplift in the country is the point, is the missing link which needs to be explored. The real dispossessed Pakistani did not come out on the streets for two reasons. First, the lawyers' protest did not until the very end establish any link between the security of the judiciary and empowerment of the legal community and the socio-economic uplift of the masses of Pakistan. The economic explanation, which was later given by certain senior lawyers, including Irtizaz Ahsan, was an afterthought and didn't really count much. I think the legal community failed to convince the general public of their earnestness to improve the fate of the common man in Pakistan. The other point is that the legal community, for example, I mean, this is the same argument that if you visit any kacheri in any city of Pakistan, you can see that the black courts are not able to distance themselves from the image of the exploiter. You interview anyone in any kacheri or any court of law in Pakistan and people will tell you, and this has recently been recorded by an academic whose book on the ordinary Pakistanis' experience with alien law has been described in great detail, and the book will soon be available here in India as well. And the scholar's name is Osama Siddiq. So I think the entire notion of the lawyers' protest representing the strengthening of the society versus the state requires a serious revisiting, serious reassessment. I don't think that was the case. Maybe I'm being ultra critic. I hope Karamat sir will be able to correct me and put things in better perspective. But surely the idea is not to take away the achievements. As I said, Nasreen has pointed out that it did contribute to a restoration of a democratic system. But it was not the only factor which contributed to the restoration of democracy in Pakistan in early 2008. And this is something which political scientist Aisha Siddiqa has also pointed out in her recent writings. This was, according to Aisha Siddiqa, this was the only massive mobilization of some political professional groups in Pakistan since the Pakistan National Alliances movement in 1977 against the Bhutto regime. She compares the 1977 movement, PNA's movement, to this movement in terms of both being right-wing aligned. I don't think we have the time to discuss that aspect in detail. But the decade